Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. How are you?
I am good. How about yourself, Dr. Bates?
I am fine. Pleasure to be with you today. Dr. Tierney Bates, work here at UNC Chapel Hill, the other school that wears blue, I guess you can say, here in North Carolina, as far as that is concerned. Honored to be with you today and have a great discussion.
Absolutely. I am looking forward to. So, will you tell us what brought you to UNC? Tell us a little bit about your career path. How did you end up there? And was that your intention?
Sure. So ended up at UNC Chapel Hill was not my intention as far as that is concerned. But I'm originally from Cleveland, Ohio. Born and raised there, got my undergraduate degree from the University of Akron, bachelor's in mass media communications with a minor in African American history. Also got my master's in higher education administration. And that is where my love for, or my career path or purpose, I like to say, blossomed to come work in higher education as a whole. I didn't see a lot of people that looked like me in the classroom or outside of the classroom when I was in school. And I had a mentor who was a white male, actually, who said this to me. It's like, we need more people and more people to look like you in this space. And that hit home with me in multiple different ways. And from there, I decided saying, I think this is the right career path for me. I was heavily involved in school, undergraduate years and during my master's as well. I did work in corporate America for about a year and a half, where I decided that was the place for me. And I knew exactly that higher education was for me. And when I came into this field, I wanted to focus around diversity, equity, inclusion, and from a lens of how do we create inclusive, belonging environments as far as that's concerned. And in my career, it's taken me to multiple institutions. So first started off at Baldwin-Wallace University in Cleveland, Ohio, where I'm from after I graduated. Then went to work at Bowling Green State University. I was there for about 3 years. And then I went to the University of Tennessee, where I was there 7 years in multiple different roles. So I've worked majority of my career in diversity, equity, inclusion work, but I've actually worked in student affairs, is what we like to call in higher education. And I've done everything though. I've done student crisis, I've done student interventions, academic advising, coaching, as far as that's concerned. And then I left when I was at the University of Tennessee. I worked in a couple of different roles. I left working in diversity, equity, inclusion, and actually went to go fundraise and do fundraising because I was bringing all this money in. And they're like, "Why are you bringing all this money in?" As far as it's concerned, I was like, because there's a need for diversity, equity, inclusion, and organizations and companies who are willing to, give money to help support their efforts. And so I went and did that on the fundraising side in the 7 years I was there at Tennessee, as far as that concerned, which led me to University of Louisville, where I was there for 4 years, as far as that is concerned, working particularly in diversity, equity, inclusion underneath the Vice Provost for Diversity and Inclusion and International Affairs. Done a ton of work in there, taught, wrote some chapters for a couple of different things. And then I ended up in North Carolina, actually coming to work at North Carolina Central University.
Excellent.
There was this little thing called racial battle fatigue. Some of us who work in higher education, especially people of color, know what I'm talking about. And I realized I wanted to go to a space that really would appreciate me. And at the same time, it would be students who look like me, who I can pour more into. And those would be the students that wouldn't end up at Chapel Hill, University of Louisville, or University of Tennessee. And so I was adamant about my next job search that I wanted to go into the HBCU space. Had a chance meeting at a national conference with some of the leadership at North Carolina Central University. 6 months later, it was a conversation that led to, hey, you should apply. And I guess you could say the rest is history. It was a hand in glove fit, and I went to work at North Carolina Central University, which brought me to North Carolina from Louisville, Kentucky.
Yep. So I'm a triple eagle.
Okay, all right. So now you know, Eagle Pride, Eagle Pride.
Eagle Pride, right? So I have 2 undergraduate degrees and a master's degree from North Carolina Central, and it was the best academic experience I have ever had.
I always tell people Central is a hidden gem. I know we're in a RTP area, but I feel like Central does not get its due props and diligence in a lot of different ways. It literally has changed lives for individuals that come to the institution. If you walk on that campus, it's actually beautiful with all the new facilities, great faculty, great staff, people that truly, truly care. I just firmly feel that, when I talk to legislators or I talk to people in our community, that Central is a hidden gem that needs a lot more shine on it. I know we're surrounded by Chapel Hill, where I'm at right now, and I know we're surrounded by Duke and NC State, but really, outside of A&T, because we all know A&T gets a lot of publicity within the state, Central truly is a national hidden gem. that just needs a little bit more exposure, and it's growing. It's growing. I mean, there are around 9,000 students, and they're continuously growing, and it's always been a top 10 HBCU. And I say it's not just a top 10 HBCU; it's a top 10 school. Period. Let's not just put on the HBCU moniker to it. And so I was in that space and truly loving it, and an opportunity came for me. My trajectory was to actually try to become an HBCU president. And so I did a couple different leadership programs. And in that one leadership program I did, the Higher Education Leadership Foundation, I ended up meeting the president of Virginia Union University and a couple colleagues from there. And I was recruited to become the vice president of enrollment management and student affairs at Virginia Union University.
Yeah.
So,
be nice to the dog.
it's my daughter.
Oh, okay. I just heard somebody breathing on you. You need to take a minute.
No, she's fine. She's fine. I'm the one babysitting today. My wife is busy doing what she needs to do, work. So it's all on me. So I'm on my daddy duties and doing this, multitasking, right?
Right. So I will say,
yes, she wants to say hi.
She's so beautiful.
All right, you can go finish your candy now.
So I would say, one of the things that I think about HBCUs is what you said, but even more so that for Black and Brown populations, an HBCU is the difference. So I have 3 degrees from North Carolina Central and have 1 degree from a predominantly white institution, day and night. So the predominantly white institution, I got a very structured, very formal, rigid education. I was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, my numbers. I didn't have a name. I submitted everything autonomously, whatever. I couldn't talk to the professor doing exams or whatever it is. So there was all this. Whereas North Carolina Central, so I was a non-traditional student. I was old as dirt when I went there. I was surrounded by very, very young people, very vibrant young people and outspoken people. But what was really interesting about my degree at North Carolina, every one of my faculty I graduated with 2.5 degrees in 2.5 years. And then I graduated my master's in 2 years. And that entire time there, every single one of my faculty knew who I was. They knew my family. They knew my history. They knew everything about me. And so no matter what was going on with me, they were always a part of it. It wasn't like they were standoffish or something, like they were standing over there. They were really intimately involved. And I would say for some Black and Brown students and people, sometimes that amount of support and, upfit is necessary to complete the degree. Because, like we can go and get the great SAT scores and the great GPA and all that stuff, but we still may not make it because we don't have what it takes to get through the process, because the process is not necessarily designed for people who are not, I wouldn't even say Black or brown or white, but not designed for people who are not already oriented to that type of learning, right? So rigid, you got to be to class at this time, you class at this time, you go do your homework, you go to a study group and all these things. And while all of that is very, very helpful, if you're not used to it, you need some skills on how to do that if you've not done that before. And even if you have great GPA, even if you have great SAT or ACT scores, you still need someone to help you navigate life on that college campus.
Yeah, and you I think you hit it right on the point. When you're in the HBCU space, your name is known, right? You're just not another number. Your faculty truly are invested in you. Not saying the faculty aren't true invested at PWIs, but as I tell people, when you work at a PWI, if you look like me, I have to interact with everyone, no matter Black, brown, green, you name it, as far as that's concerned. But a lot of my colleagues that don't look like me can pick and choose who they interact with as far as that's concerned. And even though these PWIs recruit students of color, they can still come into a traumatized community, as I like to say. And that means that the community is not built around them and not supportive of them in that perspective. Whereas that's total opposite when you come to the HBCU. The building, it's built for you. It's stand up on you, and it's there to navigate and help you navigate all of that moving forward. So that I totally agree with you as far as that's concerned.
Absolutely. And I will tell you, I don't know if you do know Mark Little. He works at Keenan Ethics over at UNC. Each year he puts on a conference called Black Communities. And it brings people from all around the world, all around the United States. And one of the core pieces of Black communities is they bring students from from historically Black, predominantly white, whatever you are, they bring students. And every year I have, 2019 was the last time they did in-person conference. but every year I have either been a speaker or a panelist or something for them. And I get to meet a lot of these students. And it's really amazing what students say about going to a predominantly white college that I don't understand why predominantly white colleges don't hear, or predominantly white institutions don't hear. Why is it they're missing this point? Because I don't care whether the student was at Michigan, Columbia, UNC, Duke, wherever they were, they have the exact same student story if they're Black and brown, right? So I go there, and so one student told the story of arriving on campus on day one, move-in date, and there was no one there to help him. So he got back in his car and he called his parents, and they met at a restaurant. And he asked his parent, what do I do? There's no one, I don't know what to do, and I don't want to be killed or arrested. So what do I do? So literally his parents came with him back to school, called whoever, the administration or the student affairs or whoever they called, and said, hey, my student is here. We don't know what to do. Well, of course, this is a Saturday and Sunday, right? So there's no one there to answer the phone. So they call the police, the university police, and they come out and they kind of help him get to where he needs to be. But like that, even that experience was enough to turn the student around. Instead of him going and trying to find out where he goes, he ends up going back to his parents because he's afraid. And so that colleges don't think about this when they're admitting communities who are not necessarily exposed to this. It's really undermined in how they think about when they're thinking about things when they admit students of, I don't like color, Black and brown students.
Right. Colleges, here's the thing with colleges. I've said it that this work around diversity and inclusion is a journey, but we've been doing it for so long, and we have our ebbs and flows. And so in the last year, we've seen more and more schools step up, trying to recruit and focus on some of these issues. But that was the same way 5 years ago.
Yep.
It was the same way 10 years ago. Same way back in the 1950s and 60s when the first students arrived on a lot of these campuses. Nothing has truly changed. Part of it is we need to have a mass. When I say mass, I'm talking about a true mass entrance of students of color and faculty and staff, not these one-offs, not just these 1-2% increases. We need to say, if you've got 1,500 Black students at UNC, it needs to be 3,000. And this is about a time frame we need to have it. You need to have X amount of faculty. We need to be intentional in righting wrongs, because that's what people don't want to have the conversations around. What we're truly talking about right now in this time and period is righting historical wrongs. And I can debate anybody on that based upon the laws, the policies, the things that researchers know about, even people in higher education have written on, that's really stopped Black and brown people from advancing.
Right.
And even though we see now, as Black women become the most educated group in America, there is still stopgates, there are still issues, there are still things that persist. And so in higher education, we have to take bold action. And for a lot of times that is scary. That's scary for leaders because that means they're going to rub somebody the wrong way. Well, guess what? If we're truly instrumental and invigorated about the principles that we truly want to stand on, you're going to ruffle feathers. In leadership, you're going to ruffle feathers as far as that's concerned. But it's the right feathers that we're ruffling in some regards for the right issues and the right concerns.
Yeah. So have you seen, I'm sure you read, but have you seen Between the World and Me?
Yes, I read the book and actually taught it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So what's really interesting about that is, he's always been a bit controversial, right? So just a bit, but I mean, I think he's almost always on point, right?
Yes,
so he's telling the world how he sees it from his lens, right? And so what's really interesting in what he said was, he said, do we actually own our own bodies? And if you go and you extrapolate that back to some of the Muslim figures like Malcolm X and Muhammad Ali and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, this name that I have was assigned to me. It's not like my parents took time to think about this name or whatever, but my last name is common. Right. I don't know what that really means. And if you go back and look at some of the census records, you can't even sure if that's really your name, right? So what it is. So when people choose to take dramatic changes to their self-identity, in a world that always wants you to be quiet, humble, don't make too much trouble, don't raise up too much stink, be low, be where we want you to be, or we will take away what we've given you. So for example, you could go to jail, right? You could be killed, you could lose your job, You can lose your wealth. You can lose whatever you've accomplished at the whim of someone else. So when do I own me, that I get to have a say in what happens to me? And I'm not talking about me being Rochelle. I'm talking about me being as a Black or brown person that has to learn to exist in a world that has not been developed for me, has not been thought of for me. I'm just thrown in the mix of this world, and I'm kind of at the mercy of those that determine what my fate should be. Not my own choosing. So no matter how much education I get, and I am very educated, I've been to my school, so I'm very educated, right? I'm very experienced. I've been doing my work for a long time. I'm very good at what I do, but someone else defines that for me. Every bit of that. So the education you have doesn't matter because you went through this school, and we hear this a lot about application tracking systems. When it finds out you've been through HBCU, you move lower down on the quadrant, right? Even within HBCU. So I posted this quite a while back. Most CIOs, chief information officers in historically Black colleges are what? White. Yeah. Most times male, but every once in a while there's throw a female in, because even we don't believe we can, right? So even we aren't sure we can step up to that level because we bring whatever baggage that someone is associated with us or tied to us and said, this is who we are. Well, and so go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, we have the historical imposter syndrome that I talk a lot about sometimes in some of my speeches and talk, is that we've been internalized imposter syndrome, that we can't be here. This isn't a space for us. America is a place of assimilation versus appreciation. Right. Of differences in some regards. And so we have to understand that we have to come to America and assimilate and not be able to keep our traditions, our cultures, and all those good things. And if you don't assimilate in the workspace, it's even worse in some regards. For example, when I talk about Black women should be able to show up with their natural hair, all the beautiful grace and everything that they are, yet that will block them, as you talk about ATS and all stuff, from getting jobs and opportunities. And we're looking at fit. And I'm out to destroy that word fit, because fit doesn't necessarily was made with what we look like in mind. So we should be talking about cultural appreciations of our hires, and looking at righting wrongs that historically we know has happened multiple times. And so it's important for us to understand moving forward in these discussions that it's going to be tough, and you're going to have to make, as a leader, these leadership decisions. But inclusive leadership is that. And if you're not a leader that's focused on inclusiveness, then you're missing out as far as that's concerned.
Absolutely. And I think that part of that is like, we struggle within our own communities. We struggle with other communities. And it's often times where that struggle gets to be so dense, it's not even worth partaking. Like I tell people all the time, in this diversity world, and I hate that word because it's so overused and so little, you get a whole lot of people that talk about it and so little people do anything about it. But when we get into that diversity world, I often equate it to money. So if you had $1 million, in your bank or on your person, why would you share it? So if I'm a white male, or even a white female in some instances, why would I share my power with you? What is in it for me? And when we start picking apart diversity, we need to have that part of the conversation first, because it's not just about, we believe in, we're going to put a diversity policy out there. We're going to, rechange these things. We're going to have a bunch of diversity conversations. And I mean, there's so many of them going on around us, right? But very little comes of them. So I often tell people, if you're going to have a conversation, come with action items that come into routes. So if you bring up imposter syndrome, what are you going to do about it? If you bring up the low number of Black and brown students you have, what are you going to do about it? If you don't have Black and brown faculty, or you're not hiring senior leadership to be Black and brown, what are you going to do about it? Because if you're just going to talk about it, continue to talk about it, and talk about how difficult it is, it absolutely is. But we put a man on the moon. So difficult is not impossible for us. We can handle difficult, but we have to want to. We must want to. And I think that that's where we sit at in this diversity discussion is, sharing the power that means to be white, right? So what does it mean to be white? So a police car can pull up behind you as a white person, and the only thing you have to worry about is how much is it going to cost, or whether you're going to lose your license, or whether you've been drinking, or whatever it is. You have those. When you're Black or brown in that police officer, you might not make it home. And I'm sure as a father, we all have these conversations with our children, how to come home, not how to be successful, not how to be productive, but how to come home alive and in one piece. That's a horrible thing to have.
I remember my father teaching me, and My mother talking about it growing up as a kid. So these are the conversations we have to have as people of color that our colleagues don't have to have,
Right.
as far as that concerned. I remember being pulled over at 16 years old and the police officer making fun of my first name.
Right.
Because one of my best friends, his name is Akil, and he told us both, he's like, you guys need to get real names. He said that to us as teenagers. And so just think about that. And, when we talk about our police forces and multiple things, that's very impactful. So, uh-oh. Somebody says they have to go potty. So,
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that as we sit here and struggle with the challenges of being Black and brown in the society, I want to say one thing to you. If I didn't say this, I would be remiss. You should keep trying to be that president, but not just a historically Black college president or university president, but a president, because I think we need to see leaders, because I think it's when Black and brown people are in leadership roles, change can happen. Because so in a lot of instances you make it out of the pot, right? So you are the list of things that you can do and you can achieve, and then so people around you, well, hiring a Black person in a leadership role is not as frightening as we thought it was, or it isn't going to go left as we thought it would. So you have to have those examples of people that are in those roles to see the value of it. And I think that's how leadership is shared. I think how we get to a diverse world is that there are people like you that are presidents and chairman and on the chairman of the board. I think that these are the things that we need to have in the discussions that we're having.
And it's funny that you mentioned that. So, I ended up being at UNC because my position at the HBCU was eliminated. So as I found out that my position would be eliminated, I started putting out fillers to friends and colleagues here at UNC that I knew that I've worked with at previous institutions, like, hey, there's an opportunity to come to UNC. Are you interested? Let's have a conversation. So that's how I ended up here. But it's funny you mentioned that, because this past year has showed me that, originally I said, oh, I want to be president at a HBCU, but a lot of colleagues that I've started having conversations with, like, no, we just need you to be a president. It doesn't matter if you're at a HBCU or a PWI. And my actual dissertation is on African-American males leading predominantly white institutions around leadership factors and race. And so I say to a lot of people, and a lot of people have talked to me over the past years, like, Tierney, we need you at these PWIs, because when that leadership looks like you, we know that there could be some effective changes and impacts that can happen based around some of this diversity, equity, inclusion stuff, based upon that people get to see somebody that doesn't look like them to be a leader, and the vice versa. People who look like you get to see you in a space that doesn't normalize you as a leader.
Absolutely. And I think that that's really important. I think this generation, the younger generation, has to really be bold. I mean, so when you think about the civil rights movement, we've been bombarded with it for the month of February. We get 28 days to talk about our history, but nonetheless, young people are really what changed a lot of things that were happening. So young people who went to school, integrated schools, it wasn't us old timers, but it was the young people who went to school, integrated schools. It was the young people who marched, so I think it's necessary that young people are instrumental in changing the way our world is, if there is going to be true change, because you have to be bold and courageous enough to take getting hit in your head or to being threatened or something, because there are a lot of people are going to wonder why. And some of those people will be your own people.
This is true.
Your own people asking, well, why is he out there? Why is he doing this? But we must have people that are courageous enough to step out there and say what, because as you described your position, so I have been at my employer for a little more than 12 years. And one day somebody wakes up and they say, hey, we're going to eliminate your position. And in the middle of a pandemic, in the middle of Mr. Floyd being killed, all of these things happen. And I had no control over what was happening to me. So when I talk about between the world and me, it's such a case study in my own life. And, so you talk about hair. So I change my mind about my hair so often, it's just ridiculous. But as I've gotten older, I've always come back to the Afro. I wore it when I was younger, but I come back to that. I'm comfortable with my hair. No, you cannot touch it. No, you cannot see what it feels like. And what happened to my hair? I washed it. I went from straight to washing it, so I wash it and this is what happens to it when I wash it. So, I can't say I own me because people want to label me as these things because it fits nicely into their narrative, right? It fits nicely into the box that they've created for me. And as Malcolm X said, who's more misunderstood, who's most misrepresented, who's most neglected are Black women. Mm-hmm. And it's amazing to me that we're that not only from other ethnicities, but from our own ethnicities, from our own people take exception to us as we are. And if diversity is going to be achieved wholesalely, it is necessary that we're inclusive of all of us, that we aren't eliminating people by age, by their sexual orientations, by their religion, by the color of their skin, by the texture of their hair, the thickness of their nose and hips. All that's irrelevant. None of that matters. And I will tell you, if you want to find out if I'm telling the truth, I don't know. So the North Carolina state coroner used to be at UNC on the top floor of McNider. And I don't know if he's still there because he was there when I was there. But if you want to find out what race really looks like, go up there where somebody's been dead, regardless of their color, and not been discovered for a long time. Wow. They're not white or they're not Black, or the blood turns blue, purple, and then black. And I mean dark Black. So there you go.
You're right. You're right. And that's where we have to have some dialogue and discussion around and moving forward. So it's like I said, it's a journey. It's not a destination. So
yeah, absolutely. And I think that, I am very impressed with your background and your experience, and I am happy that you are part of my community. But I will tell you, you've got some heavy lifting to do. You got work to do,
yes. Yes.
And you can't be afraid or, protective of yourself, right? So you have to be willing to take risk and chances.
You're right about that. That's the biggest thing that I think, when I pay attention, and I'm an avid reader to previous generations. People are willing to sacrifice things, and what we don't see nowadays is that people are not willing to sacrifice for the greater good of community in some regards. We're in more of a what I call with 5 generations out here: iGen, millennials, Gen Xers, baby boomers, and the silent generation. Is more about the newer generations, is more about the me versus the we in the community in some regards. We've seen this last summer that a lot of people will want to go out in March and fight for certain things, but how are we truly doing that and strategizing and organizing outside of just marching down the street? That's just part of the strategy. There's other things we need to do around legislative issues and policies. There's other things we need to do within our own internal organizations as a whole. So how do we come together? I tell people with social media, it is such a huge opportunity for us to use it to our advantage that the elders did not have back in the 60s as far as that concerned. So how do we truly, truly organize without saying it's about me, but it's about us and we?
Absolutely. And I think that that's one of the things that we still struggle with it as a whole, right? So how do we get our pieces and parts to a place where we are comfortable stepping out on that skinny branch, right? So how do you get your place where you feel comfortable? I can go out here and take this chance. So I mean, like I would say when Mr. Floyd was killed last year, I'm almost 100% certain when he woke up that morning, he didn't think that was going to happen to him, but that was what happened to him. I think that in a lot of ways where we are right now, the people who are putting themselves in harm's way are doing so for others. I often tell everybody I know, especially if you're Black, somebody died so you could vote. Someone died so you could vote. Somebody didn't just go stand in a line, take a poll tax, didn't do it. Somebody died. Someone shed blood so you could vote. And so if you choose not to vote, I think you're saying a lot about that person who gave their lives so you could do what you're doing. And yes, you have the right to, you don't want to, you want to abstain, you don't want to participate in the political process. Absolutely. But then you can't complain about how the process is after that.
That's true. That is true.
Absolutely. And so it is, I think where we are in our overall communities, I mean, regardless of what tribe you identify with, whether you identify as Black or brown or white or whatever, I think that it's important that we understand that nothing sustains itself on itself. It needs others to participate in order for it to sustain yourself. So I often talk about this in these chats. It's like you look at the universe does not look at diversity the way we do, because it fully embraces diversity, right? So there is a gazillion types of pine trees. There are a gazillion types of roses. Everything is replicated in nature in such a way that there's not just one kind, right? So that there are just not white people, or they're just not black people, or they're just not brown people, or red people, or yellow people. It's just people. And I take exceptions with the people of color, because I like to know what people are not of color. So when you talk about people, is it that we're talking about? Because isn't white a color? Well, maybe, I don't know, but is it a color? So why are they not of color? Why do we always refer to black and brown people as of color? And I used to say that for a while when it first became a popular term, but I don't say that anymore. I'm not a person of color. I am a black woman. That's what I am. And I am comfortable with that. Now, I remember when I used to be an Afro-American. I remember that.
Yeah, we've been called everything: colored, Negro, African-American, Afro-American. At the end of the day, as I like to tell people, when you talk about the ideation of people of color, I like to say black, brown. I like to say what it is. That's the biggest problem we have, because in our thought process, technically, when you mention people of color, I'm thinking black. Off the top, if you're Latinx, you might think Latin. Again, we need to define and say what it is. People want to kind of walk on eggshells when it comes to that, but we really need to define it as far as when we talk about that language.
Absolutely. And when you think about Latinx, I mean, so when you refer to someone that was Latino, it was someone from, Spanish countries, not Spanish speaking countries, but Spanish countries like Spain and all these other countries. And now all of a sudden we've added a new term, Latinx, which means what? So sort of like
it means
Malcolm
the diaspora.
Huh?
Well, it means the diaspora, and it means that they didn't want to say Latino or Latina. So it's supposed to incorporate the whole Latin community as a whole.
But they don't refer to, so if they're a Latin female, they call her Latina. If they're a male, they Latino. So we've created this term for them, or maybe they've even created the term, but I think it's sort of like being black.
Well, right? also with the term, it's including the LGBT community as well. So that's why they're saying Latinx. The goal is to incorporate everybody into the community, whether Latino, Latina, LGBTQ. So it's just one big community as a whole.
So can I be LGBTQ and black? Would I be invited?
Yeah, you'd be a queer black man, woman, transgender, all the other great stuff. The Black diaspora is different than the Latinx diaspora as far as that's concerned, because as I tell people, you can get white from black, you can't get black from white. So it's important for us to understand what that means in that context overall. And the Black diaspora is huge because blacks are all over the globe, if you think about it, and sometimes indigenous to those areas. So
yeah, I think if there is a television show that comes on, I think it's National Geographic. I don't remember exactly what it is, but they talk about the origins of man, right? And so it's this program, and that was really startling to see it, because they talked about Black people walking out of Africa and walking to every other place on earth. And, they became what they became when they walked to those other places. When they left Africa, they went to China. When they left Africa, they went to Europe. They went to all these other places and they became whatever it is they became. But I will tell you, the best example I have is to do a DNA search on yourself. And I don't care what color you are, do a DNA search. If you walked out of Africa and went to China, there's some African blood in you somewhere. They might not directly say Ghana or Nigeria or whatever, but it will mention one of those African countries, or somewhere along the way. And I think that what we fail to recognize is that it makes us feel better when we can put someone else beneath us, right? So I am more superior than you, so I must be white, or I must be male, or I must be something another that allows me to reflect my better than you are experience. And so I think that's an unfortunate piece of our narrative, is that we need to put someone down in order to put ourselves up. So I will say, so at the end of the day here, we have this conversation could happen for years, right? We could talk about this we could talk for hours and years and weeks.
We can.
We still have we have a lot of work to do, right? So we have a lot to do.
we all got to leave it better than we found it. And we all got a lot of work to do on our own, internally and externally, as far as that's concerned. What we really need is I like to say, our Caucasian cousins that kind of step up to the plate and really own some of this as we move forward. For it's not all the shoulders and weight is on those Black, Brown, Asian Pacific Islanders, Indigenous, all the other great stuff, people, to make sure that we educate. So when we're talking about this, we got to look at re-educating and redoing things in the K through 12 system, in higher education, in corporate America, nonprofits, the whole nine. And again, it's going to be some heavy lifting as work is concerned. But if we're truly about righting historical wrongs, as I like to say, then it's going to take that time and energy to do.
Absolutely. And I think that a part of that has to be that we are constantly working on it. I mean, it's sort of like you can't just say, well, we're going to hire a diversity officer and we've addressed the problem. You have not. You just put another person in the cog system that's going to help make the system either go forward or go backwards, depending on who you
All the
hired.
pressure on them to do all the work when it's really an organizational effort. It's not just an individual effort. So.
That's right. And you have to start by addressing the culture in your organization. You have to start by addressing the behavior. And you have to start by thinking about when you have a staff meeting and you look around and the majority of people are white, I don't care how many diversity officers you hire, you have a problem. If you look around and all the people are male, you have a problem. If you don't have any people in your organization that are leaders that look differently from you, bring a different perspective from you, that have a different sexual orientation, whatever it is, if you don't have that diversity, believe me, you're going to create a policy that's going to step smack dab on one of those people that you don't have in that room. And I don't care what it is you say.
And you're hitting it right on the head. And so as a good leader, we got to hold each other accountable, address those issues, and move through all of that in our discussions moving forward. So yeah, I think you're hitting it all on the head.
Absolutely. So I would just say, I'm going to throw it back at you, though. I think it's incumbent upon you young people and you people who are still in the fight for, a seat at the table.
As I tell people, as I get the seat at the table, I'm doing something that Harry Belafonte told me when I met him. He said, we went into a burning house when we, kicked the door in, but we didn't bring people in along with us. What he was saying is we didn't bring in the next generation with us, right? And so as we see our giants from that era finally are going on to glory as far as that's concerned, it is the job of individuals like myself and others in the next generations to carry that torch and pick it up as far as that's concerned, because we want a better things. I want a better life for my daughter. I don't want my daughter to deal with some of the things that I had to deal with, as my mom had to deal with, as my father had to deal with, as far as that's concerned. And so it is our time. That's why I use the terminology when I give my speeches, generation now, because there's never a brighter time. People are like, well, when I do this or when I get to this, no, it's now. It's always at the forefront of your mind and your actions, what you do, your leadership style, all that stuff will play an impact. So right now is generation now, as I like to say, for us to make change.
Absolutely. But I also think that it's important that people recognize that Harry Belafonte and all these great leaders of the past could not have done anything without everyone around them participating fully in their work. Charlie Nelms, who was the former chancellor of North Carolina Central, said to me something when he and I were talking. He said that the people that we're waiting on to save us are already here. We are they. And I think that's a powerful statement. We are they. There's no one coming to rescue us. There's no one coming to help us fight this fight. There's no one coming to help us get promoted to the president or whatever it is. You have to be in the trenches fighting your fight, regardless of how old you are, what color you are, what educational background. You have to be willing to get in that fight and slug away, because without the people who come around those great leaders and the people who are following those great leaders, you just one going up against a mountain, so you need everybody to come with you.
That's true. My goal is, as I say, I live by the lift as we climb. So as I'm climbing, I'm lifting and making sure I'm reaching back and pulling people with me and being around like-minded people, knowing that we can leave a legacy and an impact for the future generations to carry that torch. So.
Absolutely. So I have a question. There's a gentleman at your organization, Jamar Reed, I believe is his name. And he works, I believe, in the School of Dentistry.
Haven't met him. So one of the things that's been a gift and a curse being here at UNC for me is that I literally was on the job only about 7-8 weeks before we went into the pandemic. So a lot of individuals that I normally probably would have met over the course the year and a month I've been here, I haven't had a chance to meet. Like, I am literally still meeting people either via email or through the virtual space because nobody's on campus. And a lot of people are still in remote as far as that's concerned. And so as I'm learning about people, I'm literally like, oh, I've been here a year now, and we need to schedule and have conversations and different things and fabrics. And that also speaks to the fabric of that, that density of what we are missing here at the institution as whole. And that's different for me. I know at prior institutions, whenever we brought in new faculty and staff of color, there was like this welcoming, like rah-rah, even in the virtual space, I would say at Louisville, they would bring everybody together and say, here's the new faculty members in all the different schools. We're a big organization as a whole, but the community, I know for us as a culture, is important.
Yeah. So I'm going to put a couple of people in the chat you should reach out to. And I'm not a big fan of always meeting people in person. I'm kind of antisocial and introverted a little bit. So
well, that's the beauty of Zoom nowadays. We can meet anywhere, anytime.
Yeah. And so I would just say, it's important to know who your people are and know who's around you, because you never know who can help you in the fight, and so it's just one of those things where I think that UNC and Duke and all these, they're huge, right? And so people always make an assumption that somebody who work there. And that's not the case, so you don't know everybody just because you work there, because there are a lot of people you haven't even met yet. But I would say that at the end of the day, if you get a name, make sure you make a contact with that person. And you may find that that's not the right person for you, but it's one of those things that may bring you value later on. Where is he at? I cannot find him anywhere, but I'll find him and I'll send
definitely send it to me.
I put Mark's information in the chat, but I'll send you the other one. And I just say at the end of the day, creating a community is the way to succeed. So you think about what happened in Washington, D.C. on January 6th. They created a community and all of them heard the message and all of them bought into it and went there. Right. So whether the community is for good or whether the community is for bad, if you create a community, there are people who will stand with you.
That's true.
And so you could add me to your community. I'm a part of your community now.
Well, I'm a part of yours now as well.
Absolutely. So I will stand with you in whatever it is that you're trying to do. So we have about 5 minutes. So I'll leave the remaining of time to you to say whatever you wish to say that we didn't cover, or if there's.
Well, I'll just say that, this is a journey. We're going to do good things. We're going to learn from our mistakes. We're going to fail, but we're going to fall forward when we fail as far as that is concerned. And I stand here today to say that I'm going to be a person that lifts as we climb, to make sure that for the next generation, things get better as far as that's concerned. I know I stand on the shoulder of the giants, of the Harry Belafontes, the Dr. Kings, the Malcolm X's, the Muhammad Ali's, who I've had an opportunity to meet, and my dad, who's from that generation as well. And so it's important to understand that we inherit this time on earth to do something better for others. And so that we need to focus on that overall. And then when we leave, that we leave a legacy for our children and for those who are not our children in some regards, but for the greater good of the youth and those who come behind us as well. And so, as Harry said, going into that burning house, I'm going to say once we go in the house and put out the fire, I want to make sure I decorate it, that it's responsive and reflects everyone in it.
Absolutely. And I think it's very important that we think about that along the way. As every step we're going, we're bringing those behind us who can help, and we're doing what we can at the end of the day to make sure that we are constantly thinking about putting forth a better community for all of us, not just those of us that are Black and brown, but a better community for everybody.
Definitely.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. As I said earlier, I will send you a link once the video converts, and I'll send you the other name that I can't think about. This is the downside of getting old. You forget if you don't write it down, you don't remember it. But I will send you that information as well. And I hope you will connect to them, and I hope you guys can do great things. So thank you so much for your time.
I would definitely follow up with them. Thank you for your time, and thank you for talking with me today. It's been an honor and privilege, and look forward to becoming a part of your community.
Absolutely. And I wouldn't say I know everybody, but I call myself the connector because that's what I do better than anything else.
Well, that's a strength we both have. I tell people I'm the Clarence Avant of Black higher education.
Yeah, well, that's very, very nice. But you know, I think that it's very important that you expand your community to people who are in the fight with you, who are opposed to the fight, because you need all those people to figure out how to get through the fight.
You're right.
Absolutely. So thank you again. Have a very nice day. And I look forward to talking to you again. Stay safe.
Thank you very much. Have a blessed day.
You too. Bye.